Movies love to make money. Of course, that's the whole point. When you ever hear a director or writer going on about how it's all for the love of the art, well, that's probably true, but deep down they're also dreaming about cash. Lovely, wonderful cash. This can sometimes cloud people's judgment, however, and as such, massive mistakes are thrown into the works before a film has even been released. It's madness! Tripping up before you've even started to walk. Doesn't even make any sense. I'm Simon from Whatculture. This is 10 upcoming movies that have already ignored massive mistakes. Number 10, Bond 25. Failing to quit when you're ahead would be the main mistake here, and the brains behind Bond bending over backwards to get Daniel Craig involved again as the British spy seems like a silly move all round. The man has already peaked in the role, and the last outing, Spectre, was roundly thought of as a dud, so doesn't it make more sense to look to the future and find someone brand new to step into James's shoes? It's not like they're going to stop making the films after all, so think bigger, stop playing it so safe. The reality of the situation is that Craig equals box office sales, and again, like we said, that's the real temptation here. Juicy cash. Otherwise, we may have actually got a decent film next year. Oh well. Number 9, the Halloween reboot. You know what we don't need any more of? Slasher reboots. These were all the rage back in the 80s, sure, with A Nightmare on Elm Street, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Friday the 13th bossing theatres across the world like they owned the place. When the latter was revived in 2009 though, guess what happened? That's right. It died a death worse than anything you saw in the movie. People just weren't interested, and the film itself felt so tired, a far cry from the shock value they had brought decades prior. Why then are we getting a Danny McBride Halloween reboot? John Carpenter is on board here, and maybe enough time has passed to make this work, but surely the likes of Get Out have proven that when it comes to horror films, the public wants a bit more, or at least something different. This is not that. Number 8, Death Wish. Look at Batman vs Superman. Know what the problem was? Got the tone wrong. Or the tone was all over the place. The point though is that it's so important to make sure you don't do that. Hence why we're all worried about the Death Wish remake. When the original with Charles Bronson was released, it was a bleak anti-vigilante movie about a man who became obsessed with violence following the murder of his wife. It is not, however, an action revenge flick, which is what Bruce Willis and friends seem to be going for. It certainly wasn't funny either, and yet apparently that's what we're going to embrace in 2017, and then even AC/DC pop up. Who exactly is this for? Why is it called Death Wish? Number 7, The Dark Universe. As good as it may be, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a lot to answer for, namely convincing other big studios they now need one of their own. In short, it's a terrible idea. Whereas Marvel took its time and carefully crafted parts of its world, everyone else is jumping in feet first, terrified they may be losing wonderful box office receipts. You can't fast track this stuff, however, and that's why Universal's Dark Universe is evidence that rush jobs don't work. It started with The Mummy, which tried to shoehorn Dr. Jekyll into the mix, and deliberately hinted that all films from this point on would be connected. No one even wanted that to begin with, and we're stuck with it now. Just make good films and stop worrying about tying them all together. Number 6, Terminator 6. The best thing to happen in 2019 will be the Terminator rights going back to James Cameron so he can make another entry in the franchise, which would be the best thing ever. He's already said he wants to recast Arnold Schwarzenegger, and here's where the argument starts. Now, for my money, this is absolutely the right thing to do. I ain't going to watch a Terminator movie without Arnie in it for better or worse. What would be the point? However, it is fair to say it seems ridiculous to cast someone in their 70s in such a film just because they were in the previous ones, especially as this could be used as an opportunity to start again. Going back to actors who may be past their prime is a bit risky. It's a tough thing to call because you just never know how an audience is going to react, but much like Bond, sticking to the norm can sometimes be for the worst. Number 5, The Justice League. If you have rubbish CGI in your movie, it's not going to go well. So easy to spot that stuff nowadays, it can really take you out of the experience. And while it's not the be-all and end-all, you want to avoid it as much as possible, especially if special effects are at the heart of the film. That's why there's all the fear with The Justice League, because even from the trailer this looks bad, or at least not as good as it should be. If every time Cyborg comes busting onto the screen it seems like I've just drawn him on a piece of paper, well that's not going to be good. And you'll just be sat in your nice comfy cinema chair mouthing off that DC don't know what they're doing. Probably fair to a certain extent. Number 4, Tomb Raider. Why on earth are we trying again with Tomb Raider in the cinema? When do video game adaptations ever work? Even if you can think of one, I bet it's followed by, well, it wasn't that bad, because none are actually any good. And yet we are doing this again because Lara Croft is coming back to theatres soon, even though the last attempt within this field, and that would be Assassin's Creed, was awful. In fact, it was more awful than we ever could have assumed. Doesn't matter who's in it or what the story is, Hollywood just doesn't know how to make this work, so giving it one more go just because is ridiculous. Rumour has it this will be like Batman Begins and introduce Lara to a new audience, and maybe that goes okay, until it doesn't. Number 3, Scarface. The more famous Scarface with Al Pacino was a remake of a movie from the 30s, so the new one we're getting is the third remake in that particular franchise. Already that sounds slightly daft, right? Forget that Pacino made that role his own and turned it into one of the most iconic movies ever. Hollywood has decided what the world is missing is a new version, so that's what we're going to get. This kind of approach is rarely successful, however, mostly because of all the baggage that comes along with it. Kind of already been proven true as well, because director David Ayer dropped out recently, probably when he came to the same realization we just have. Number 2, Avengers Infinity War. I highly doubt the next Avengers will be a bad film, but it is going to have to do an awful lot of legwork so that all those characters don't make it overly confusing and hard to watch. Just think of the amount of super individuals that are going to turn up. Got the world's best party. You can already get an idea of this because look at DC's Suicide Squad. There were other issues there of course, but a major one was how it was just too hard to fit in all those faces and not make it feel like a mess. You'll probably get even more folk in Infinity War too, so how on earth do we do all of that in a 2-hour movie and it not feel like some crazy experience? Wait and see. Number 1, Death Note. Whitewashing has marred the film industry since the very beginning, and sadly, it isn't going away. Films that are guilty of it rarely escape a backlash, and in many cases, it's the only thing they're remembered for. Take 2010's Prince of Persia, for example. The studio cast some of the palest white actors they could find to portray Middle Eastern and Asian characters, insisting on the most bankable cast possible. That movie got nothing right either, unless what it wanted to get right was setting diversity back for several years, and if that was the case, it should get an award. And it gets worse too, because a live-action Netflix remake of anime series Death Note now exists, and every Asian character in there has been pushed aside so that a Westerner can play it instead. The film has already been hit by criticism for this reason, forcing the filmmakers to come out on the defensive by insisting their vision is a global franchise. Unless it ends up being a global franchise people love for reasons beyond its casting choices, Death Note is probably going to go down in movie history as a bunch of rubbish. Know any other movies that have ignored massive mistakes? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Then you can read more articles like this on Whatculture.com and follow Whatculture on Twitter at Whatculture. My name is Simon from Whatculture, and soon my voice will be returning to your ears.